What is a huge revenue generator? The Chancellor was talking about enterprise zones taking over from the regional development authorities, and the 10 zones will offer reduced business rates and simplified planning rules in order to encourage inward investment and job creation. Let's talk to Andrew Sissons, researcher at the Work Foundation and lead author of their report, Do Enterprise Zones Work?, who's with me now. This all goes back to the 1980s, what Thatcher introduced then. Have lessons been learned, do you think, in what the enterprise zones are wanting to offer now?
Well, it's very difficult to say. I mean, if you look at the international experience from around the world, just at the moment, New Jersey and California, two states in the USA which have had enterprise zones for a long time, are looking at repealing those laws. We've talked, people have talked about what you could do to change the enterprise zones to make them more appropriate for the 21st century. It's yet to be, until we see the detail, what's in the budget, it's very hard to say.
OK, but the empirical evidence of what happened in the 1980s, how many jobs were created? Did it lead to this massive explosion in growth?
The evidence suggests that actually in the zones themselves, yes, you did get large-scale job creation. I mean, Canary Wharf is the most salient example there. You've got now, obviously, a huge financial centre. However, up to 80% of those jobs were actually taken from other places, and in some cases within the same city. So you had actually businesses moving from within one town.
So they weren't new jobs?
Absolutely. And that's the key question which we've got to pull out, is whether or not these jobs are new jobs for the country as a whole, or whether they're just damaging town centres and so on to move businesses to other locations.
The criticism of Labour's regional development authorities was that it was very bureaucratic, this money was not being spent in the right way, but £100 million for the enterprise zones now over 4 years doesn't sound a huge amount of money.
It doesn't, especially in the context of the cuts that are being talked about, we're seeing come through, particularly to local authorities.
And does that translate into, is there any way of actually sort of working out how many jobs that could actually create?
Well, the striking figure from the 1980s, in our report, we reckon that about £50,000 per job in today's money was the cost per job, so that would lead to 2,000 jobs. If the policies are the same, I suspect that they will be cheaper, they will focus on more cost-effective things. There won't be the big tax breaks, the big capital allowances that we saw in the 1980s, purely because there's less money.
I suppose also, when you're looking at creating an enterprise zone somewhere as well as giving the tax breaks and making job opportunities available, you also want that infrastructure to be there to allow people to actually sort of do business effectively and efficiently. So is that going to be part of what you're looking out for now when these things are announced as well?
I'm not sure on that question. There's a question about planning regulations. I think the fast-track planning is going to be very important. When it comes to the wider regulations, I think it's much harder to unpick. I don't know what there will be for businesses beyond the fast-track planning. It's very woolly at the moment, so it's quite difficult to say.
All right. OK. Well, Andrew Sissons at the Work Foundation, thanks very much for coming and talking to us today. 4:39 in.